Okay.
So we met in India. Okay, that's everything that I know. What happened after that?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
after I came, that was in 2007.
7.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
After I came back from India, I found a job in San Francisco Bay Area, California, in Silicon Valley,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't do many spiritual things. Maybe I did keep practicing Zen Buddhism. Before I went to India, I had started practicing Zen Buddhism at the San Francisco Zen Center in San Francisco, California, USA.
I didn't know that. For example,
Yep.
I didn't know that. Mm-hmm.
But I just practiced a little bit, and then well, let's see. Uh, yeah, before I'd gone to India, I had done my first sesshin. A sesshin is a Japanese word. Shin means mind or heart. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
common Japanese character you see. And sesshin, as a word, means sort of like focusing mind or gathering mind, or 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 you could say, I'm not sure if it means gathering mind, because shin can also mean essence. So it can be sort of like clarifying essence or clarifying your heart, even. I'm not entirely sure, but the idea is that you, for 1 week, generally for 1 week, you just only practice seated meditation, which in Japanese Buddhism is called zazen. Um, za means seated, and zen. Uh, Zen. What does Zen mean? Zen comes from. They say Zen comes from. It's a Japanese word that comes from the Chinese word chan, and chan comes from the Indian word. I guess it's Sanskrit, which is jnana, which is hard to pronounce maybe because
Junona.
it's jnana, which means is Jnana transcribed into English, or transcribed into English alphabet. And jhana means, I guess it can mean self-knowledge, or uh, uh, maybe like, I guess it can mean focus. Zazen, so za being just means seated, and zen being jhana, is generally just translated as seated meditation. So maybe jhana means meditation, or you could maybe take a very liberal approach, very liberal interpretation as self-realization or self-knowledge, or something like that. But in Zen, most schools that I've practiced with would just translate it as seated meditation.
That's good. I didn't know anything about it. Even that you were practicing Buddhism before India. So that's new for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started practicing Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, because when I was young, when I was 18 years old, I started to practice Japanese martial art called Aikido. And
Aikido.
yeah.
I was practice karate do.
Oh,
when I
oh,
was I don't know, maybe 18.
that's great.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
How long did you practice for?
A few years. I think so, around 3 years.
Whoa, wow,
I
okay.
won it in a contest. Well, many things.
You won the contest?
I went like in a,
Yo.
I don't know how many, but I won.
Wow, okay.
And I won. Yes.
It's better than me. I never won a contest. I'm impressed.
So keep going. So you were in Aikido. So do you start to be like curious in Japanese culture?
Hmm. Yeah, I had a strong interest in Japanese culture even when I was young, like a
Mm-hmm.
child, maybe because there were a lot of Japanese video games like Nintendo, and there was something. very interesting and pure I felt about the artwork and the culture. And yeah, I was intrigued by martial arts as a way of sort of like understanding oneself or one's mind, or um, kind of controlling oneself. Um, so yeah, I started practicing Aikido when I was going to school at UC Davis, with my Aikido sensei meaning teacher,
Mm-hmm.
David Burt Sensei. And I practiced with him very intensely for like 4.5 years, basically while I was an undergrad. And he was the one that first taught us Zazen. We did a little bit of Zazen with him, and Mysogi breathing, which I don't understand very well, but that was Mysogi breathing is not typically it's not typical of the schools of Zen that I've practiced, but it is a practice in Japanese martial arts, sort of maybe akin to pranayama in yoga. My understanding of it's very superficial, so I don't know if that's accurate, but it does involve meditative breathing, I think. So when I was practicing at the Davis Aikikai, um, my martial arts teacher taught us seated meditation, and he also recommended that I visit the San Francisco Zen Center, which was just a few hours away from where I was living in Davis, California.
Mm-hmm. So that's why, how do you start to meditate? And what was the most important thing to learn how to do a meditation? How do you start?
Yeah, I mean,
What
for
is
me,
it? Give us a tip.
um, I think the the biggest help for me with meditation was actually my martial arts practice, both just the kind of physical conditioning of
Mm-hmm.
both flexibility, strength, endurance, and also sort of a sense of pride in thinking that I was tough, because meditation is very difficult, and so what's required is sort of like a ability to manage your posture and to mitigate and to mitigate pain that you might feel from posture misalignment, and also to find a certain strength conditioning that you need. It's just, if you practice running, you'll be a good runner, and if you practice, meditation, you'll be a good meditator. And the practice it can be difficult. It's physically challenging, but if you persevere, the same way someone who practices running can easily run 10 miles, which might seem impossible to someone who doesn't run. Someone who
Mm-hmm.
practices many hours of meditation, finds sitting for hours on end to be quite comfortable after all that conditioning. So the probably the most practical thing with meditation is just to persevere in trying, and that I think is somewhat echoed by the teachings of Zen teacher Reverend Shohaku Akamura, with whom I've practiced a little bit. One of his famous teaching quotes is, "There's no such thing as good or bad meditation." And I think that's something that I'm still studying and trying to understand his teaching. But when we sit and we have some expectation with regards to what we're going to experience or what we're going to receive, we lose some of the, or we lose entirely the the spirit of meditation, of coming to the present moment without rejecting it, because in not necessarily trying to make the present moment into something it's not. So not trying to necessarily make ourselves at peace. If we're not at peace, we can just sort of say that we're not at peace, or we can just notice how we're feeling, and not necessarily label it good or bad. And I think that's the teaching that I think maybe he's trying to teach, and is sort of echoed in other teachings of Zen Buddhism, of going beyond good or bad, which is it can be a little bit confusing because Buddhism is very much about good and bad, because at the heart of Buddhism are the precepts and dignified conduct and ethical, humane conduct, which is quite strict. But in our meditation, we do relate to judgment in a different way of what Reverend Shohaku Akamura's teacher, Reverend Kosho Uchiyama Roshi, taught as opening the hand of thought, which he describes as sort of the essence of meditation, where we give up our thinking and we give up our judgment about our experience, so that we can sort of come face to face with what we're actually experiencing, which in itself may bring us closer to morality in the end. When we really look at what's going on with ourselves or the situation we're in, we find like maybe we're actually bound tighter to morality by giving up our judgments.
Well, I think one of the most difficult things that when you are starting to meditate is that you close your eyes and then you have a lot of things in your mind, yes, that are coming. So you don't know. The first thing that people said is like, you have to control your mind and breathe. So how we can do it? So how I can say to my mind, okay, stop, I'm breathing, or what is your advice about it?
Yeah, so well, in Zen Buddhism, there's in the entire world of Buddhism, Zen is just one little part, and then within Zen Buddhism, there's a bunch of different schools. I guess mostly there's Rinzai Zen, and then there's Soto Zen. And what I have practiced is Soto Zen, and there's definitely different takes on Soto Zen. But within Soto Zen, it isn't necessarily emphasized to control your thoughts. And I think maybe that is one of the things that Uchiyama Roshi points out in his teaching of opening the hand of thought. Some people like to refer to thinking as clouds in the sky. Reverend Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. Roshi is a Japanese word to refer to senior Zen teachers, especially those who have passed away. It means sort of like old teacher. Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who is the Japanese priest who founded the San Francisco Zen Center in the 1950s, I believe. He referred to our relationship with thinking in Zazen as opening the front door of our mind and opening the back door of our mind. And whatever thoughts come in, like we let them come in, and when they want to go, we let them go. But he says we don't ask them to sit down, and we don't serve them tea. So not serving tea to your thoughts, and maybe in Uchiyama Roshi,
just letting go. That's it.
Let it go into to see that thinking, a big part of maybe sort of the philosophy of Zen is to understand that our thinking is not reality. It's expressed in, there's a Japanese phrase called kahitsu. Kahitsu has been translated as variously as not always so, which was the San Francisco Zen Center translation at times. And then I believe Akamura Roshi translated kahitsu as thinking can never grasp it. So, whatever reality is, you can say it's daytime. It's like, but it's daytime here and it's nighttime somewhere else. And on the moon, is it day or night? You can go different places in the solar system, and there's no day and night. And, day is still just an idea. If you're in the shade, is it suddenly nighttime? Anyway, thinking itself is, I believe is described as sort of like thinking is our tool and not thinking shouldn't be a prison that we put ourselves in. So if we don't understand our thinking, then we can fall into the prison of our thoughts. But if we do let go of our thinking, it's still maybe our minds, I don't know, are an unending stream of thoughts, and we'll never come to the end of using thinking, but we won't be maybe trapped by our own thoughts as believing that our thoughts are reality. And that's me maybe taking some creative liberties with some of the teachings of these Zen teachers, but I think that is the definitely within Zen, you know, it isn't taught that we should stop our thoughts, although stopping thinking, I guess, is understood to be maybe some of the deeper meditative states, which aren't emphasized so much in the Soto Zen practice that I've done, but it is sort of recognized that there are deeper meditative states where maybe your mind is very calm, and maybe there's, you know, some sort of profound experience of experiencing the world without thinking, but it isn't necessarily some strict like goal that we have to like strictly, you know, work ourselves into stop thinking. Although maybe there have been within, I don't understand Rinzai Zen very well, but Rinzai Zen is sort of a little more creative than Soto Zen, and they use various koans, which are sort of riddles, and they use sort of surprising acts like shouting, kind of unexpected acts, maybe to change the student's relationship with their own thoughts. But I don't know much about Rinzai Zen.
Okay. Do you think that mantra could help us to control also our mind and to have a better connection? Do you use mantras or not?
At times, yeah. If you if you sit a Zen, I mean, I think any meditation retreat you sit, if you sit enough, you'll try everything, because it's very difficult, and you definitely relate to, you know, you relate to your own mind and your own thinking. For me, I just related to it in various different ways. You know, I guess for me, opening the hand of thought has become a mantra, of sorts, or like, so in Zen, Zazen means seated meditation, and there's another name for the practice that they do in Soto Zen, which is called Shikan Taza. Taza, I think is a name for the seated posture, and then Shikan, I think, means like it's like pure or like just. So Shikan Taza, I think the phrase means just sitting. So like no mantra, no breathing exercise, no directed
Just
awareness,
stay.
just sitting. And one teacher even described it as just sitting and get rid of the just. So sitting, was, you know, so, and
That's difficult.
yeah, it's really difficult, and it's sort of like, it is sort of a mantra, because in Uchiyama Roshi describes this in his book, which translated in English, titled Opening the Hand of Thought. He describes the Zen practice as this line ZZ prime, which is sort of like the goal. Like, we're always trying to sit Zazen, and like that's the point. Is like we're always trying to sit Zazen, and we don't necessarily say, now I'm sitting Zazen or now I'm not sitting Zazen, but it's like, it's always this, it's like it's an effort, or it's a goal, or it's an intention, to you know, I guess it's still not totally clear to me, you know, if the goal we're aiming for is, you know, this, in Soto Zen, there's a Japanese Zen teacher who lived in the year 1200 AD. His name is Eihei Dogen Zenji, and he's regarded as kind of like the superlative Zen teacher in many Soto Zen schools. And he has an essay called the Fukan Zazengi, which is regarded as one of his more important essays, one of his important writings or teachings. And in the Fukan Zazengi, he quotes a Chinese writing about the essence of meditation, and he sort of Ehe Dogen Zenji. Zenji means actually Zenji might mean like sort of old Zen master. Zenji is the superlative term for a Zen teacher. It doesn't get any higher than Zenji. And Ehe Dogen Zenji is sort of widely regarded within Soto Zen and also outside of Soto Zen as a pretty important spiritual figure with regards to humanity itself. His writings and his teachings are thought to be quite genius and remarkable. But in the Fukan Zazen, Heidogen writes he writes, what is the essence of Zazen? He says it has nothing to do with sitting, walking, standing, or lying down. He says the essence of Zazen is to think, not thinking. How to think, not thinking. And then he says Hishirio. So Hishirio is maybe it's a riddle within Zen. Shirio means thinking, and so Shirio is thinking. Fu Shirio, fu means not in Japanese. So fu Shirio means not thinking. So he says meditation is not Shirio. It's also not fu Shirio. So it's not thinking, and it's also not thinking. So he pretty much clearly states his thesis with regards to thinking in Buddhist practice. And Ehe Dogen Zenji is very much a Buddhist. He wasn't just like a philosopher. He considered himself to be he considered himself to be authentically transmitting the teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha, the historic Indian Buddha from 2,500 years ago. And so his statement that meditation is Hishirio, he means beyond or other than, and that's where various Zen teachers have tried to translate that to try to explain what it means, and that's Uchiyama's translation of Hishirio, I guess, is opening the hand of thought. Some teachers have described it as letting thinking be as it is. Some teachers have described it as beyond thinking, and so that beyond thinking, maybe letting go of opening hand of thought, letting go of thinking, maybe that is sort of a mantra or a it's a long answer that is maybe not so much different than a mantra. And for me in my practice, like when I sit, like my posture is probably the biggest focus. Is just no matter what, if you can maintain the posture itself is, like it's not a thought, like just because you think your posture is some way doesn't mean that it is. So the posture is something objective. And then in addition to trying to maintain a posture that's upright and dignified the way that the Buddha may have sat, also just kind of wrestling with this riddle of what is Hishirio, what does it mean to open the hand of thought? So for me, it's not a mantra, but it is something that I sort of use and rely on, that contemplation.
Well, as you were talking, I just remember something about Reiki. Reiki is a Japanese technique, and the sensei was Mikao Usui. Mikao Usui, even though Reiki is not a religion, he was a Buddhist. So he said that we should stay in this position at least from 20 to 30 minutes, just closing our eyes, and that's it. So as we teach this, but actually we don't spend so much time in this position because we are not ready for it. But I think it's the same thing that you are talking. Just stay in one position and stay. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. During any time. How long is your meditation? Usually, how many time do you take in one day?
So like throughout my life, many days I haven't meditated at all. At the San Francisco Zen Center, which I lived there for maybe a year or so total, they generally will sit two periods in the morning of about 40 minutes apiece. And they generally, in Soto Zen, they generally intersperse their seated meditation with 10-minute periods of walking meditation, where you walk very, very slowly and very deliberately in the meditation hall, which they call the Zendo. Shohaku Akamura's school, Sanshinji, they sit two periods in the morning of 50 minutes with 10 minutes of walking in between. Some temples will generally sitting two periods in the morning is pretty common, and then some will sit two periods in the evening. At Tassajara, which is a Zen monastery in California, where I lived last year for 7 months, our schedule was a bit irregular due to the pandemic. But I think the normal schedule is two 45-minute periods in the morning, one or two periods midday, and then two periods in the evening. But it's a monastery, so they're pretty strict schedule. Personally, recently I've been sitting one period in the morning. I try to do 50 minutes in following Nakamura's example. So I do one period.
Okay, good. As you said, you were in this place 7 months. And how was the experience? How do you feel inside? What kind of men were before? What kind of man is now? What happened?
Yeah, the experience at Tassajara was wonderful. It was not the usual experience because of the pandemic. We began at the beginning of January what's called an ongo, and an ongo is an ancient tradition in Zen. I don't know what the word means, but in English we call it a practice period of 3 months. And I think that 3-month period is historic. Like even in Eihei Dogen's time, 1200 AD, they did 3-month practice periods. I don't know the exact details of their practice periods, but at the San Francisco Zen Center, a practice period is generally, and so the San Francisco Zen Center is an organization that includes 3 different temples. There's the San Francisco Zen Center City Center, which is a beautiful building right in the middle of San Francisco. There's the Green Gulch Farm Temple, which is north about an hour, 30 minutes drive, and it's also a very beautiful temple. And then Tassajara is also part of the 3 temples, and that's just south of San Francisco, an hour or so. And so all 3 of those temples do practice periods of 3 months generally, and the 3-month period is intensive. So when you start, sometimes they'll start with a sesshin. A sesshin is where you sit sort of all day for a week, or as few as 3 days. So they'll begin the practice period with a sesshin, and there'll generally be sesshins in the middle, and it'll generally end with a 7-day sesshin, where you sit all day, every day for 7 days. So at Tassajara, I went there in January, the beginning of January, to do an ongo, to do a practice period. And an ongo at Tassajara is exceptionally difficult because the schedule is very strict. You wake up at 4 a.m. or you wake up at 3:50 a.m. because you have to be in the meditation hall at 4 a.m. or 4:15 or something like that. And you sit 2 periods of meditation. They practice for all 3 meals, except for their days off. They practice what's called oryoki, which is ritualistic eating in the meditation hall. So you have a very strict, elaborate eating ritual where you have your eating bowls in the meditation hall, you lay them out, you chant to the Buddhas and ancestors, and then part of the sangha being the I guess it's a Sanskrit word for community. I don't know what it translates to in Japanese, or maybe that is Japanese, but this part of the sangha will serve the meal. So it's quite an elaborate and quite frankly, quite a wonderful ritual. It's one of my favorite things to do in Zen. But so you're in the meditation hall many hours a day, both doing seated meditation, doing oryoki, doing service where you're chanting. They do a long chanting service every morning at Tasahara. So a practice period of Tasahara is pretty difficult. Like you got to be pretty committed to Zen practice to do that for 3 months. It's a long time. But in doing so, there is something, just like we were talking about in Reiki or in Zen, just holding the posture. The posture is sort of something objective. And when we sort of get in contact with something objective, like the posture, it can sort of bring objectivity to our own thinking, to our own feelings, like to ourself. So for me, my experience at Tasahara was very much with the structure of the daily schedule and the structure of the Ongo, which was cut short somewhat by the pandemic, but we continued sort of a pandemic schedule after that for many months. That the structure of the schedule is difficult, and it reflects, for me, it reflected myself back to myself. So I could see who I was more clearly. I could see my assumptions and my reactions, my habits, my behaviors more clearly reflected, and in a very healthy way that I could sort of bring awareness and bring choice, bring contemplation and decision to who I am, and to how I relate to the world, how I relate to other people, how I relate to myself. So the structure of the practice brings an objectivity. It's like a mirror to see ourselves and to cultivate ourselves, to walk in the direction that we want to walk, and that is one of the things that Uchiyama Roshi talks about in his teachings in his book Opening the Hand of Thought, which is one of my favorite Zen books, and I think about it a lot. He talks about his practice, even as a senior priest, is walking, just even as a senior priest, and he was a very senior priest. His practice is just walking in the direction of the Buddha. He doesn't necessarily kind of claim that he is perfect by any means, but his practice is vow. He talks about vow and repentance. We vow to uphold the Buddha Dharma, and then the Buddha Dharma, mean the most direct translation of that term, means the teachings of the Buddha. We vow to practice the teaching of the Buddha, and we walk in that direction. And so for me, the practice at Tasahara was walking that path and finding that there were a lot of ways that I could improve. So it was,
so good.
great.
I think those experiences are very value, like you are in front of yourself and you can see everything that you are, and leave your fears away and keep going, so good. That's why I was so interested in your story. Well, I have another question. For example, when we meditate, we said like, okay, we ask to God help, yes, and we said to please protect our environment, our energy, blah blah blah. So I want to know if in Buddhist you have to do the same. You have the same, or just you connect with God and that's it. You don't have to say, okay, you have to protect my around me, my energy. What do you think about it?
So Japanese Zen Buddhism is complex. It's been for people in California where the majority of the Buddhism I've practiced, they've sort of emphasized certain points that may be differently emphasized in Japan. And of course, Japanese Buddhism is uh, 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 take on, it's a version of Buddhism that came from China, and China had a version of Buddhism, and India had its own version of Buddhism. And people debate what it was and what did and didn't the historic Shakyamuni Buddha teach, and some people even wonder whether he existed at all. But in Japanese Zen Buddhism, there are many rituals, and there are deities that they pray to for protection and for guidance, and those rituals do still exist in California Zen, the way that San Francisco Zen Center practices it. There are many rituals, and with regards to the significance of them, I don't know. In fact, not knowing is actually one of the most, as I understand, one of the most important teachings of Zen. In the book Opening the Hand of Thought by Uchiyama Roshi, he does talk about when we sit meditation, like we're aiming at something, and we're sort of persevering in this pursuit of something, but we also sort of immediately become complete. Like the moment you sit meditation, the moment anybody sits meditation, they become complete, which is to say, they become themselves, which is the universe itself. So it's sort of a philosophy of Zen that, like, our mind likes to split things in two. Like, it likes to say, like, I am this and I am not that. Like, I'm me, I'm not you. Day is day and night is night. And so when we sit meditation, part of opening the hand of thought is to let go of all these boundaries and all these thoughts that we've created of what we are and what we aren't. And we even let go of past, present, and future. We let go of here and there. We even let go of existence and non-existence, and even reality and unreality. In fact, there's a line from the Diamond Sutra, which is a very old sutra. I don't know about the origin of it, but I do believe the Diamond Sutra is the first, it's the oldest printed text of humanity, is a copy of the Diamond Sutra, I believe, or is it the Heart Sutra? It might be the Diamond Sutra. Anyway, it's a very old text from India. In the Diamond Sutra, I believe it says Shakyamuni Buddha is supposedly quoted as saying that the enlightenment of the Buddha is neither real nor is it unreal. It's wholly beyond real or unreal, which is kind of nonsensical. But that sort of nonsense is something I sort of relate to as that's what it means to go beyond thinking. So when we sit, we open the hand of thought, and we don't know, like we don't know anything, and we don't need to know anything. One quote that Shohaku Akamura Roshi has shared is Shakyamuni Buddha said that the self, the only foundation of the self is the self. The self is the foundation of the self. So when we start to think that, like, okay, there's a world, and then, like, I exist in the world, and, like, before I was born, I didn't exist, and now I exist, and later I may exist, or may I go someplace else. We're kind of coming up with a definition of the self as sort of as if that the universe itself is we exist in the universe. So we imagine that there's a universe, and then we imagine that there's a self inside the universe, and so we imagine that there's a separation between the two. But I think what Uchiyama Roshi talks about in his book is, like, we're already the universe, and the universe doesn't have a beginning, and it doesn't have an end, because whatever, we're already that which is sort of real, like whatever's real exists beyond space and time. So for me, I think the meaning and the deep religious meaning for me of Zen Buddhism, and the deep spiritual meaning, is that when we sit, like we don't know, we give up our ideas about God. If, it's not that we're saying that it's not atheism. Like we're not saying there's no God, because that would be dualism. And it's not that we're saying that we are God, because that's sort of simplifying things. But like when we don't know, whether we're God or not God, and we don't know whether we are the universe or not the universe, or there is a God or isn't a God, when we give up all like the thoughts and sort of like conclusions, which you might view as like traps of thinking, like the thinking has trapped us into limiting what we are. So it's like, like if somebody says like, am I one with God or am I not one with God? I don't know, like, and I think that not know, like, I don't know, but like if it matters, you should find out. And and that finding out is sort of like assuming that is like the maybe the practice of Zazen, the practice of it's not that
I
it's a
think probably it's like how we are in the mirror. So I'm watching, well, I'm looking in the mirror and I say, okay, what do I want to see of myself? Lightness or darkness? Is something like that. Because I'm both. My negative thoughts, my negative words, my negative feelings, my fears are my darkness. Or my love, my happiness, well, is my lightness. So what do I want to see? Maybe it's something like that.
yeah, I mean, like so I'm sharing some things here which are maybe liberal interpretations of Zen Buddhism, but for me this is how I relate to it. But I think for me in Zen, like there's an important part. Shunryu Suzuki Roshi had a quote. They asked him like, what is enlightenment? He said, to see one thing through to the very end is enlightenment. So like when we sit, there's a famous modern Zen master who was the teacher of Uchiyama Roshi. His name is Kodo Sawaki Roshi, and he's kind of one of the most prominent voices in modern Soto Zen, and he very much taught Shikantaza Soto Zen, so just sitting. And he says that Zazen, which is all he emphasized, all he taught, and all he practiced, he says Zazen is good for nothing, which is to say, like, when we sit Zazen, we don't necessarily have a goal. So, like, to say, like, we sit and we want to know, are we the universe or not, that wouldn't be supported by what Sawaki is maybe saying with that quote, maybe. But and I think that like giving up trying to get something out of Zazen is the sort of like to look at the thing in its entirety, like like with regards to like our darkness, I don't, I think some things I'm still learning about myself, but like if we think about fear, like fear is like a distortion. It can be very much a distortion in thinking. Like if we get afraid and then we have these distorted views of the world and other people and of ourselves. But I think, like maybe in Zen, what we would do is we would bring our attention to it, or we would let that experience of fear open up in front of us or something. We wouldn't necessarily try to get rid of it or push it away. And this is maybe sort of something I'm still learning about myself, but like if we can think that what we are is the universe itself, which doesn't have an opposite, like there's no the universe is one thing, so that would be non-duality. Something that has no opposite would be that which has no opposite, which would not be opposite from anything else. But if we can take that what we are as that thing that has no opposite, we can't really find necessarily where something begins and where it ends. So I think when we give up these like when we kind of give up these like kind of separation of cause and effect, maybe we can have like a wider view on our emotions, on our fear, on you know on maybe the darker aspects of ourselves, and maybe it's sort of at the heart of our fear, at the heart of our darkness, maybe is something kind of less less offensive. It's maybe something that is looking for compassion or caring or awareness. So yeah, I don't know. There's a I often think of there's a teaching in Tibetan Buddhism that describes anger. Anger is vowing not to indulge in anger is one of the Buddhist precepts, and so anger is viewed as sort of something that we work with in Buddhism, I guess, or one we work with in Buddhism. Is a Tibetan teaching that says there are 4 levels to anger. The superficial
Yeah.
level, four levels of anger. The most superficial level of anger being anger. The if you go and if you maybe stay present with the anger without maybe jumping on the conclusions of anger, without falling asleep into the
I
thoughts.
keep thinking about the issue or what?
Yeah, so I guess if you relate it to anger by opening the hand of thought, which is you don't necessarily believe in the conclusions or let the anger take you over, maybe you'll find what I guess what the Tibetan teaches thing is deeper inside the anger is actually sadness. So that what somebody who is angry might on a deeper level be experiencing is sadness. And if that person can get in touch with that sadness, maybe then they understand what they're experiencing better. And that's just the second level. The third level, behind sadness, I guess if you go deeper in it, is actually, I think it was said, deep concern. So it's like, well, you're sad, which is kind of, anger is very much an emotional thing, and I found for myself to be very reckless. And sadness is an emotional thing and can be quite, also it's kind of the limited in its view. Deep concern is also sort of like a judgment. And I guess this Tibetan teaching is saying at the deepest level is actually deep caring. So it's actually something quite innocent. And if we can sort of find like the heart of the emotions, we can find like an innocence, or we can find like maybe a softness that we can relate to with compassion and encouragement or acceptance, that there's nothing wrong with caring, because if what you are is the universe, then this is what you are.
But how can I manage the anger, because it's the first emotion that I have?
You tell me. I don't know. And I guess very much like, for me, I mean, just to be honest, the way I relate to it is especially in this pandemic, like I've been under various work related life stresses, and when I sit zazen, like I sort of hope that my opinions about things are changed, that I can find like a new perspective, which is very hard, because for me my emotions can be quite self-justified. I always think that what I feel is very justified, and I don't like to be proven wrong. Like, it's hard for me to find humility in admitting fault and letting go of the deep convictions, or the deep views of like seeing like a certain situation as this person is guilty, they're bad, and I am innocent. That's sort of like a simplistic, in the US we would say like a Disney movie view of bad guy, good guy. And it's very hard to see for me, I found it's very hard to see myself as like, oh, like I'm sometimes I'm the bad guy, and or like I have these, I have these kind of ways that I avoid owning up to my responsibility as a human being. I shy away from taking responsibility for the things I say and do, and it's hard to show up for. And that one of the teachings that I've got from the San Francisco Zen Center is Zen practice is about showing up for what you're doing, like showing up for how you feel, showing up for who you are, showing up for what you're doing, for how you relate to people. And that kind of showing up can, for me, involve repentance for the way I behave. And for me, I found that Zazen is a repentance of sort, in that one of the things that Shohaku Okumura has said before is that when we sit Zazen, like if you have an automobile, and that automobile has gears, right? You put it into drive, you put it into park, you put it into neutral. He says that Zazen is normally we have to have our car in drive, which is to say we have to like believe in reality, and we have to like have feelings, wants, desires. We have to sort of trust ourselves, or we won't be able to achieve much. So we do have to trust ourselves. But when we sit Zazen, we actually take our car and we put it in a neutral. So it's sort of like whatever we think and whatever we feel, we actually only have one conclusion, which is to keep sitting Zazen. Like our conclusion is the posture. For me, the way I relate to it is our conclusion is our posture of the Buddha. Like no matter what we think, no matter what we feel, we hold the dignified posture. And for me, one of the ways that's been really helpful is it's helped me see how I'm responsible for a lot of my difficulties, and so, sort of like within the light of the Buddha, if I want to say that I'm practicing Buddhism, like I have to own up to the Buddha's standards of conduct and the Buddha's understanding of self and other and their relation to reality. So if I found that I haven't honored the truth of existence, then I have to repent for that. And I found that repentance is what brings softness and possibilities to my life, that I don't have to hold on to conclusions that I don't actually believe in, just because maybe I was the one that said that with conviction. I can repudiate my own convictions, and I think in Zen Buddhism, our thoughts and our feelings are sort of their convictions. Like we say a thing, it's like this and it's not like that, or I am angry and I see the world this way. And the practice of Zazen is sort of, we can't stop our anger necessarily, but we can kind of bring a gentle light or an objectivity. We can bring the dignified posture of the Buddha to the situation and sort of relax the boundaries of self and other, relax the kind of simplistic views we have of good and bad. Like, this person is my enemy, and I'm, I'm a good person and they're a bad person. We can relax those kind of simplistic views and find like a humility.
In Reiki, we have sentences that we said, just for today, don't be angry, just for today. And we have to practice every day. So I said, it's very easy to be angry. When you go out and you find something that you don't like, you just be angry. Your ego is like, what? What is going on with me? I'm here. and make a reaction. So I always make this question because I think every person have the way to not be angry. And I said, you have an emotion, a strong emotion, so you have to let it go, but not with a person, not with an animal, not with a plant, because they are alive. You have to go out, take to the bathroom, to your room, go to walk, but you have to let the emotion go. And after that, you have to stop and think what was happened, what was the word or what was the thing that my ego say, okay, there is something wrong here, and analyze and try to change the situation or translate, made a translation. Okay, this person, the thing that he want me to say was another thing, in other words. So my ego say, oh, okay, I can understand, it's okay, and I feel better. And if you do it fast, it will be better for your body, because if you contain this emotion in yourself for longer, so your body is going to feel outside, so you can feel sick, no? So that's really nice. Just for today, don't be angry.
That's cool.
Yes. He also said, just for today, be grateful, because say thank you is a power word. That sometimes we don't use it, but we have to say thank you for everything. Just for breathing is just a reason to say thank you. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
So good. Well, Nick, what else do you want us to let us know about meditation, about spiritual life, about, I don't know, your big learning?
I am still practicing. That's what I would like
It never
everybody to
ends.
know. Yeah. I guess I could share another quote by Shohaka Kamura Roshi, which for me, reflecting on some of the things we've talked about, I realized like, yeah, I am really still practicing with this stuff. But the quote by Shohaka Kamura Roshi, in his view, or in the view of his school, they say enlightenment is beginningless, which is to say it doesn't happen. It wasn't not like you're unenlightened and then you're enlightened. Enlightenment is beginningless. It already happened at the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
then they say practice is endless, which can be kind of daunting. But I think I like to believe that there's great beauty and inspiration in that too. So for me, I'm very much still learning.
Yes, I think that's a good answer. We are always still learning. We can know many things, we can teach what we learn, but we're still learning till the end. We don't know. Yes. So
Oh,
thank
I did want to share
you.
briefly. I did put on my Rakasu. The
Wow.
Rakasu, yeah. I don't know if
Show
it's technically
me, show
appropriate
me.
because this only means that I have received the Buddhist precepts. I think I can show this. This is
Wow.
my Buddhist name, Shikudo Soki, which was created by my Zen teacher, Reverend Paul Haller. This is what I last year at Tassajara, a number of us took the Buddhist precepts, and so this is meant to symbolize the robe of the Buddha, which his was kind of like a sash, a whole body robe sewn with rags. But in Japanese Zen Buddhism, we sew these kind of little bibs, these little bibs.
So good.
So I
I
put it
think it's
on.
very significant. I have another question. You said that you have another last name, yeah, that is from your teacher, right?
Mm.
Post that in Facebook, but I want you to let us know why it's important to have this last name. His name.
Yeah, so well, that's a good question. I mean, I think I don't know if I've actually thought about that too much, but it is customary in the school of Buddhism when you take the Buddhist precepts, which is you're vowing to do good things, to not do bad things, and to practice for the sake of all beings, to practice to pursue Buddha's enlightenment, which is beginningless, it's very confusing. But you vow, not to kill, not to lie, not to steal, kind of sort of like the 10 Commandments, maybe in Christianity. So it's a code of conduct. And when you take the Buddhist precepts, Showaku Akamura says you become a child, you ask to become a child of the Buddha, and you receive a Dharma name. And I guess the Dharma name is sort of meant to, actually the name is meant to both reflect something that you are and also reflect something that you will become. And so they give you two names. The first name for me is Chikudo, which means bamboo way. And then the second name is Soki, which in my case means ancestral function. And some of the translations are, don't make total sense in English, but I guess it's meant to be sort of like an inspiration or a vow to sort of to begin like a new life of sort, maybe like a new name, a new kind of vow of who you'll be. I don't know actually too much about it.
I think that you receive all the gifts that all your master have give you to that moment. I think so is something like that. Like you receive from the past, from your ancestors, but a spiritual ancestor is something that he had gave you.
I like that.
Yes. So when we made an alignment in Reiki, is that a master give all the energy from the ancestors, from the other ancestors, including Mikao Usui. And bamboo is a very important symbol in Japanese, also in Reiki, because it is the symbol where the energy flow in your body. So is that like in your corona chakra?
Mm-hmm.
It has it's like a bamboo, and the energy flows.
Yeah.
It's really nice that how do you connect all the things.
That's cool.
Yes, it is. So you make me understand more about Reiki and more about Mikao Usui, even if we were talking about him, but he was Buddhist. So I now I understand why to him was important some things like the precept just for today, don't be angry, to connect this position and just stay in that position for many from 20 to 30 minutes during a day. And to pass this all ancestors energy to the student,
I want to learn more about Reiki now, actually.
Yes. Yes, please. Well, I really like Reiki, but because you can connect with the energy and pass the energy, how they can heal the person, but not only the body, just his soul, and it is very beautiful in animals because they connect very easily. They don't have the mind, so they just receive the energy without any answer. Just they say, okay, I need this, thank you, bye bye. And how do you know that it works? Because so quickly they react, they say they feel better, they start moving, they start doing the same things before an illness. So that's so much beautiful work.
That's cool.
Oh my God, Nick. It's a pleasure to have you here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. This was really fun.
And to see you so longer.
Yeah.
Please don't say how many years.
Oh, no.
Yes. So thank